What happened when an undercover CEO uncovered corruption, tearing her own company apart? Hello, amazing viewers! Today's story takes you inside HayesCorp, where Victoria Hayes, the ambitious founder and CEO, goes undercover as a low-level assistant to investigate why her once thriving company is crumbling. What she discovers is shocking: abusive management, favoritism, and a ruthless leader destroying the very foundation she built. But Victoria's journey isn't just about exposing the truth. It's about rebuilding trust and restoring HayesCorp's true vision. Stay tuned to see how real leadership can turn things around. Victoria Halstead, the visionary CEO and founder of Luxura Cosmetics, once took immense pride in her company's commitment to producing high-quality beauty products and delivering exceptional customer service. What began as a modest boutique flourished into a regional chain with over 15 locations, each boasting sleek interiors and dedicated teams. Luxura Cosmetics had built its reputation on elegance, innovation, and a genuine connection with customers. However, lately that reputation seemed to be crumbling. Customer complaints about rude interactions, inconsistent service, and declining product quality were piling up faster than Victoria could address them. Reports of high employee turnover and low morale became all too frequent. Yet when she confronted her regional managers, particularly Natalie, who oversaw the prestigious flagship store, she was met with dismissive reassurances. Natalie insisted that the complaints were typical of the industry, nothing more than the usual ebb and flow of a demanding business. But Victoria wasn't convinced. The polished reports Natalie provided painted a picture of smooth operations and steady growth, but her instincts told her something was wrong. The numbers didn't add up. The carefully curated facade of success was beginning to crack, and Victoria feared that her once thriving company was slowly rotting from the inside out. Frustrated by the hollow assurances and desperate for real answers, she decided to take matters into her own hands. If no one else would tell her the truth, she would find it herself. Victoria made a bold decision to go undercover as a sales associate in her own flagship store. The plan was simple: blend in, observe, and uncover the reality behind Luxura's growing problems. What she didn't anticipate was just how deeply the toxicity ran, and how much work it would take to rebuild her empire from the ground up. Victoria Halstead's plan to go undercover wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision. It was a calculated effort driven by her determination to unearth the truth. With the help of her trusted assistant Claudia, she crafted a new identity. Gone were the designer suits and sophisticated elegance that defined her public image. Instead, she adopted the name Riley Carter, a 30-something woman seeking entry-level retail work after relocating to the city. Her appearance underwent a subtle yet effective transformation. Victoria dyed her honey blonde hair a deep chestnut, swapped her signature heels for sensible flats, and traded her polished makeup for a more modest, understated look. She completed the disguise with cheap but neat clothes, a plain blouse, black slacks, and a pair of eyeglasses that softened her striking features. Claudia even went as far as preparing a fabricated resume, filled with minor retail jobs, perfectly plausible but bland enough not to attract suspicion. Victoria applied at Luxura's flagship store, posing as a newcomer with minimal retail experience. Natalie, the regional manager, barely glanced at her credentials before assigning her a position as a sales associate. It was evident Natalie didn't recognize her. She had always operated Luxura from the top down, trusting her managers to handle the day-to-day details, while she focused on expansion and strategy. That distance had once been a strength, but Victoria now realized it had allowed problems to fester unchecked. As Riley, she quickly learned that the training process was practically non-existent. Natalie's curt instructions amounted to little more than keep the shelves stocked and don't annoy the customers. The indifference stung, but Victoria kept her composure. She wasn't here to be coddled. She was here to uncover the truth. From her very first shift, Victoria sensed something was wrong. The employees were curt and guarded, their conversations tinged with frustration and resignation. She had expected some level of dissatisfaction, but not this level of apathy. The flagship store, once Luxura's crown jewel, was clearly losing its luster, and Victoria was prepared to find out exactly why. It didn't take long for Victoria, disguised as Riley, to see that Natalie's leadership was at the heart of Luxura's problems. Natalie ruled the flagship store with an iron fist. Her management style a blend of condescension, intimidation, and blatant favoritism. She prowled the sales floor with the sharpness of a hawk, not to assist but to criticize. If a display was slightly off, or a customer lingered too long without making a purchase, Natalie's voice would cut through the air like a whip. "What are you doing standing around? Move, or I'll find someone who can." The message was clear: efficiency at all costs, even if it meant breaking her employees' spirits. Victoria watched as Natalie targeted certain workers relentlessly, particularly younger staff members or those still learning the ropes. Her harshness was reserved for anyone who dared to show initiative or asked for help. Meanwhile, her favored employees, those who played by her rules and kept their heads down, received the better shifts, easier tasks, and even compliments, however rare. This hierarchy of favoritism was evident in the way the staff interacted with each other. Guarded, wary, their shoulders tense whenever Natalie appeared. Even worse, Natalie had no tolerance for mistakes. During one shift, Victoria saw her publicly berate a new sales associate for misplacing an item. The employee, barely out of high school, stood frozen under Natalie's onslaught, her cheeks burning with embarrassment. Natalie's voice was dripping with scorn. "If you can't handle something this simple, maybe you're not cut out for retail. Or work, for that matter." The young woman's hands trembled as she nodded, her gaze fixed firmly on the floor. Victoria's stomach churned at the cruelty, her fists clenching by her sides. It was one thing to expect excellence, but Natalie's methods were poisonous. Her leadership wasn't motivating employees, it was crushing them. Victoria had seen enough to know the problem ran deep, and Natalie's toxic approach was only the beginning. As Victoria continued her undercover work at Luxura, it became painfully clear that Natalie's cruelty was only part of a much larger problem. Luxura's management system was designed to exploit workers rather than support them, with Natalie capitalizing on every loophole to tighten her control. During a lunch break, Victoria overheard Natalie boasting to another manager about her efficiency tactics. These tactics included deliberately reducing hours for employees who dared to question her or who failed to meet her near-impossible standards. Cutting hours was Natalie's favorite weapon, wielded to punish, manipulate, and coerce. It was a strategy that left employees struggling to make ends meet, afraid to speak up or even take a sick day. Victoria also discovered that payroll adjustments were routinely made without employee consent. Overtime hours were either erased or altered to avoid paying extra wages, all justified under the guise of cost-saving measures. Those who dared to question discrepancies were quickly labeled as troublemakers. To make matters worse, Natalie manipulated schedules so that no employee ever worked enough hours to qualify for benefits, capping shifts just below the required threshold. Victoria noted how Natalie's select group of favored employees always received the best schedules, with predictable hours and occasional bonuses thrown their way to maintain their loyalty. The corruption wasn't just limited to payroll tampering and selective scheduling, it was cultural. Natalie fostered an environment where survival depended on appeasement and silence. Speaking out or showing initiative could result in retaliation, such as being assigned the most grueling shifts or having hours cut to the point where quitting seemed like the only option. The constant churn of underpaid, overworked employees kept Natalie's authority secure. Victoria's outrage grew with every revelation, her determination strengthening. Luxura was crumbling from the inside out, a rot born from greed, manipulation, and unchecked power, and Natalie was the architect of it all. The breaking point came on a sweltering Friday afternoon when an exhausted and overworked employee named Sarah collapsed on the sales floor. Victoria had been shadowing her that day, observing the dedication and efficiency with which Sarah handled customer requests, despite the unrelenting pressure from Natalie to increase sales metrics. As Sarah tried to keep pace with unrealistic demands, her steps grew unsteady, her face pale and dripping with sweat. Mid-conversation with a customer, her knees buckled and she crumpled to the floor, the expensive perfume bottles she had been restocking clattering loudly around her. Panic rippled through the store, but Natalie's reaction was nothing short of callous. "She's just being dramatic," Natalie snapped, rolling her eyes as other employees rushed to Sarah's aid. "If she can't handle a simple shift, then she shouldn't be working here." Her cold dismissal sent a wave of fury through Victoria, who was already kneeling beside Sarah, offering her water and gently urging her to breathe. Employees whispered in hushed, fearful tones, their concern overshadowed by the anxiety of drawing Natalie's ire. Victoria noted how others avoided eye contact, their expressions betraying resignation rather than genuine surprise. This wasn't the first time someone had collapsed under Natalie's brutal regimen, and it likely wouldn't be the last, if things didn't change. When Sarah regained consciousness, she confessed, through ragged breaths, that she hadn't eaten all day, too afraid to take a break because Natalie had threatened to cut her hours if she was seen slacking off. Victoria's anger solidified into icy determination. Watching Natalie openly berate a vulnerable employee was bad enough, but knowing the manager was willing to endanger Sarah's health to maintain her own twisted idea of efficiency was intolerable. As Natalie continued to dismiss Sarah's collapse as laziness, Victoria realized her investigation had gone on long enough. The store's toxic culture, enforced by Natalie's ruthless methods, had pushed good employees to the breaking point. Victoria could no longer stand by and watch them suffer under such cruelty. She resolved to confront Natalie the next day, her plan to reveal her true identity fully formed. Natalie's reign of terror was about to come to an abrupt, well-deserved end. With her decision made, Victoria intensified her efforts to gather irrefutable evidence against Natalie's cruel management practices. She knew that simply confronting Natalie wouldn't be enough. She needed tangible proof to ensure lasting change. Over the next several days, Victoria discreetly recorded conversations between Natalie and her employees, her phone hidden in the pocket of her shabby uniform. Each interaction painted a damning portrait of a toxic workplace. She captured Natalie berating employees for trivial mistakes, threatening them with reduced hours, and mocking those who dared to voice concerns about their workload or pay discrepancies. Victoria also kept meticulous notes documenting the absurdly high turnover rates, the persistent understaffing, and the pattern of Natalie retaliating against anyone who challenged her authority. She even gathered statements from employees who had suffered under Natalie's oppressive leadership. Sarah, still recovering from her collapse, revealed how Natalie frequently manipulated schedules to avoid paying overtime, forcing employees to work excessive hours without proper compensation. Others spoke of favoritism, with Natalie rewarding compliant workers with slightly more leniency, while punishing anyone who questioned her harsh tactics. Victoria's file of evidence grew thick, filled with testimonies, recorded threats, and detailed descriptions of Natalie's manipulative practices. She reviewed everything one final time, her resolve strengthening with each piece of proof. The corruption festering within her store was not just unethical, it was dangerous. Armed with all the evidence she needed, Victoria was finally ready to confront Natalie and begin the process of restoring her company's integrity. The day of reckoning arrived, with Victoria prepared to expose Natalie's abuse of power in front of the entire team. It was during the monthly staff meeting, a rare occasion when all employees were gathered in the break room. Victoria, still disguised as Veronica the janitor, waited until Natalie had finished her usual speech, filled with empty praise and veiled threats. As the room settled into a tense silence, Victoria stepped forward. "I have something to say," she began, her voice steady and clear despite the fury simmering beneath her calm exterior. Natalie's eyebrows rose in disdain, clearly unimpressed by what she perceived as a lowly janitor daring to speak up. Ignoring Natalie's dismissive smirk, Victoria pulled out her phone and began playing a series of recordings. Natalie's voice echoed through the room, harsh and unforgiving. There was the moment she mocked Sarah's exhaustion, taunting her for being too weak to handle the workload. Another clip captured Natalie threatening an employee with reduced hours for daring to ask about unpaid overtime. The room grew uncomfortably still, eyes widening as the truth was laid bare for all to hear. Employees exchanged shocked, angry glances, the full extent of Natalie's cruelty finally laid out before them. Natalie's face paled, her bravado slipping with every word that played from the recordings. "This is ridiculous," she snapped, her voice shrill with desperation. "You can't just come in here and—" Victoria cut her off. "Yes, I can, because I'm not just a janitor. I'm Victoria Hayes, CEO of HayesCorp." Gasps filled the room. Natalie's face went slack with disbelief, her confidence collapsing under the weight of Victoria's revelation. Victoria continued, her tone sharp and unforgiving. "I trusted you to lead this team with integrity and compassion. Instead, you've created a culture of fear and manipulation. You've threatened, exploited, and driven away good employees, and I have proof to back up every word." She lifted the file of documents and testimonies she had collected, a damning indictment of Natalie's leadership. Natalie's eyes darted around the room, seeking allies but finding only resentment and betrayal in the faces of her staff. "Security will escort you out," Victoria stated firmly. "You're fired, effective immediately." Natalie's protest died in her throat as 2 guards appeared to remove her from the premises. For the first time in weeks, the air in the room felt lighter. But Victoria knew her work had only just begun. With Natalie finally removed, Victoria Hayes wasted no time beginning the process of rebuilding her company from the shattered foundation left behind. She gathered the remaining employees, their faces still etched with disbelief and cautious hope. Standing before them in the same break room where she had unmasked Natalie's corruption, Victoria addressed the team with sincerity and humility. "I owe you all an apology," she began, her gaze steady as she met their eyes. "I failed to see what was happening right under my nose. I trusted the wrong person and let your voices go unheard. But that ends today." Victoria then opened the floor, encouraging employees to share their experiences and suggestions. The atmosphere was tense at first, but as one person spoke up, others followed. Sarah described how her workload had been doubled without compensation, forcing her to choose between her health and her paycheck. Mark, another employee, detailed the manipulation of hours and how Natalie's threats had left him constantly on edge. Others spoke of favoritism, harassment, and the overall toxic environment Natalie had cultivated. Victoria listened to each person intently, taking notes and asking questions. She made it clear that their feedback wasn't just being acknowledged, it was being acted upon. The following weeks were a whirlwind of changes aimed at restoring what Natalie had broken. Victoria hired new supervisors who demonstrated compassion and integrity. She implemented an anonymous feedback system, where employees could report issues directly to corporate headquarters without fear of retaliation. Payroll discrepancies were corrected, unpaid overtime compensated, and strict policies against harassment and favoritism were put into place. Victoria also launched regular training sessions focused on leadership, conflict resolution, and empathy, traits Natalie had so blatantly disregarded. Victoria made sure her presence was felt, visiting the location frequently and working alongside her employees to understand their challenges firsthand. Her approach wasn't just about damage control, it was about proving that leadership was built on trust, respect, and collaboration. Slowly but surely, employees began to speak up more freely, their confidence returning as they realized their voices mattered. Victoria's commitment to rebuilding HayesCorp's culture from the ground up resonated with everyone, and the seeds of a new, healthier workplace began to take root. But she knew this was only the beginning. True change would require time, patience, and constant vigilance. With the foundation of trust beginning to rebuild, Victoria Hayes shifted her focus to implementing long-term structural reforms that would prevent the corruption she had uncovered from ever resurfacing. Aware that accountability and transparency were crucial, she started by overhauling HayesCorp's management hierarchy, replacing toxic leaders with those who demonstrated integrity, empathy, and competence. Victoria promoted dedicated employees like Sarah to leadership positions, recognizing their work ethic and ability to inspire their peers. Additionally, she initiated a mentorship program where experienced workers could guide new hires, ensuring a more welcoming and supportive environment from the outset. Victoria also introduced a decentralized reporting system that allowed employees to voice their concerns directly to corporate headquarters, bypassing local managers who might suppress grievances. This move was coupled with the launch of an anonymous feedback platform, ensuring that all voices could be heard without fear of retaliation. To maintain consistent oversight, Victoria mandated quarterly audits of payroll, scheduling, and employee satisfaction surveys, tools aimed at identifying and addressing systemic issues before they could spiral out of control. Recognizing that effective leadership required continuous learning, Victoria implemented regular training sessions focused on conflict resolution, ethical decision-making, and communication skills. These sessions were designed not only for supervisors, but for employees at all levels, fostering a culture where growth and improvement were actively encouraged. Victoria also ensured that merit-based promotions became standard practice, eliminating the favoritism that had plagued the company under Natalie's rule. The structural reforms didn't stop there. Victoria revamped the company's core values, emphasizing collaboration, fairness, and respect. Every employee was provided with a clear handbook outlining their rights and responsibilities, along with channels for escalating concerns if they felt those rights were violated. Through these sweeping changes, Victoria aimed to ensure that HayesCorp's culture of integrity would be upheld, not just temporarily, but as a permanent cornerstone of the company's identity. With structural reforms in place, Victoria Hayes recognized that restoring integrity to HayesCorp would require continuous vigilance and a commitment to ethical leadership. Acknowledging that real change couldn't be achieved through quick fixes, she launched a comprehensive initiative called Operation Integrity, designed to embed the company's renewed values of fairness, transparency, and respect into every facet of its operations. Victoria began by instituting quarterly leadership evaluations, where managers and supervisors were assessed not only on productivity but also on their adherence to the company's ethical standards and their ability to foster positive workplace environments. Peer reviews and anonymous feedback became integral parts of this process, ensuring that everyone's voice held weight regardless of their position within the company. To further solidify these reforms, Victoria introduced an innovative mentorship program called Leaders of Tomorrow, aimed at nurturing new talent and providing career development opportunities for employees who demonstrated integrity and dedication. This initiative paired experienced leaders with promising employees, creating a network of support and guidance that encouraged growth and accountability. Recognizing that effective leadership required empathy and open communication, Victoria also implemented ongoing training workshops focused on conflict resolution, diversity and inclusion, and ethical decision-making. Understanding that transparency was essential to maintaining the trust she had worked so hard to rebuild, Victoria established a dedicated ethics committee composed of employees from various departments. This committee was tasked with reviewing complaints, investigating reports of misconduct, and ensuring that any unethical behavior was swiftly addressed. Victoria also created a confidential whistleblower hotline, empowering employees to report concerns without fear of retaliation. The committee's findings were made publicly accessible through quarterly reports, allowing employees to see firsthand the company's commitment to integrity. Financially, Victoria ensured that payroll systems were audited regularly to prevent any recurrence of the manipulation and exploitation she had uncovered. Clear policies were established for overtime, benefits, and scheduling, and employees were encouraged to bring forward suggestions for improvement. Over time, the changes Victoria implemented began to yield tangible results. Employee satisfaction and retention rates soared, productivity improved, and HayesCorp's reputation gradually mended. Victoria's relentless dedication to fostering a culture of respect and transparency had transformed the company from a crumbling enterprise into a thriving community built on trust and accountability. With the integrity of HayesCorp finally restored, Victoria Hayes witnessed the company entering a new era of growth and prosperity, one built on a solid foundation of trust, accountability, and ethical leadership. The structural reforms she implemented, coupled with her unwavering commitment to transparency, had transformed the corporate culture from one of exploitation and neglect to one of collaboration and mutual respect. Employees who had once felt powerless now thrived under the mentorship programs, contributing innovative ideas and feeling valued for their efforts. Team morale soared as workers discovered their voices held real influence within the company's decision-making processes. Financially, HayesCorp flourished as well. Clients, impressed by Victoria's bold leadership and dedication to fostering a healthy workplace environment, renewed their contracts at unprecedented rates. New partnerships were forged, drawn to HayesCorp's commitment to integrity and quality service. Customer satisfaction rates climbed steadily, bolstered by the enthusiasm and professionalism of employees who now took pride in their work. Reports of exploitation and manipulation were replaced by stories of mentorship, growth, and ethical achievement. The positive reputation HayesCorp once held was not only regained, but elevated to new heights, becoming a model of transparency and inclusivity within the industry. Victoria's leadership approach continued to evolve, she remained actively involved in the day-to-day operations, frequently visiting various departments and engaging with employees at all levels. Her humility and accessibility became trademarks of her leadership style, reinforcing the message that every individual within HayesCorp had a vital role to play. During quarterly town hall meetings, Victoria personally addressed concerns and celebrated successes, ensuring that her presence was felt not just in policy, but in action. More than just repairing the damage caused by Natalie's toxic management, Victoria had built something far more resilient and enduring. She had created a workplace where talent was nurtured, voices were heard, and ethics were prioritized above profits. As HayesCorp continued to grow and innovate, Victoria knew that the lessons learned from her undercover journey would guide her leadership for years to come. Her resolve to maintain the integrity of the company never wavered, and under her guidance, HayesCorp blossomed into a thriving, respected organization where employees felt valued, customers were satisfied, and the company's vision was stronger than ever. The story of HayesCorp teaches a powerful lesson about leadership, accountability, and integrity. Victoria Hayes' journey reveals that true leadership requires more than authority. It demands empathy, humility, and a willingness to face uncomfortable truths. By going undercover, she discovered how toxic leadership had poisoned her company's culture and took decisive action to rebuild trust and prioritize ethical practices. The transformation she initiated shows that lasting success is built on valuing employees, fostering collaboration, and maintaining transparency. Ultimately, Victoria's determination to address corruption head-on proved that leadership grounded in integrity can overcome even the most entrenched problems.